Okay, hi everybody, and I'm back. Welcome back to my kitchen. I took a little bit of a break to have lunch because I didn't realize what the time was. And I'm just moving things out of the way. Now the cans are sterile, or the jars are sterilized, so that's done. We don't need to do anything with the jars, and I'm just dumping out my husband's coffee and cleaning up the sink. Now let's get started with this recipe. And this recipe is fairly simple. All you're going to do is you're going to boil the ingredients once I get to it. But the first thing you need to do is you need to wash out your pickles. And what you're going to need is you're gonna need a fairly big strainer. I'm gonna put you guys down where you guys normally go. If you're used to watching my videos, you're gonna see my belly, not my face, but you're gonna hear me. And pardon the mess. Put that over there because we'll use that later. Okay. And you're gonna wanna run cold water for your pickles. You don't need to do them in hot water. You just need to do them in cold water. I'm gonna move you guys up here for a second. So those are all the pickles. Basically what you just want to do is you want to rinse them, make sure there's no dirt on there. You're also going to look for any blemishes on your pickles. Like I said, if you get them at the farm stand versus the grocery store, usually you can find really good pickles. Once in a while at the grocery store, you may find one that is started to rot or is really dirty. But with pickles, and you need to do this, even though we're not doing both recipes today, you need to do this for both the dill pickles as well as the bread and butter pickles. And rather than throwing multiple things at you guys, if there are a similarity between the bread and butter and the dill pickles, I'll let you guys know so that I'm not repeating myself tomorrow when I do film the dill pickles. And it's not raining that heavily. If I could get into the garden and reach the dill, I might actually go ahead and do the dill pickles. Now, the difference between these pickles and the dill pickles, other than one is bread and butter, is sweet, and the dill pickles are sour, is you don't cook. I was looking at my great-grandmother's recipe. You don't cook her pickles. You do cook the pickling solution, but those pickles don't get processed. It takes 4 days before you're able to eat them. But once you jar them, they don't process. You just put them in your refrigerator and you enjoy the dill pickles. And we'll get to that recipe, like I said, later on when I do that. So now what you're going to need is you're going to need a cutting board. A fairly big knife. I'm going to use my butcher knife for this. You can use the paring knife, but you got to be able to cut the pickles. And when you do the pickle slices, you want to make sure you don't slice them really, really, really thin. You want to have a little bit of about a 1/4 inch. If you like thicker pickles, you can of course make them thicker. If you do like them more thinner, you can certainly do that. Just don't make them paper thin. Don't make them too thin. And I'm just draining. I'm just going to put my pickles. I'm going to put a towel so that the pickles just drain their water. I'm going to move you guys over to the table for a quick second so I can look at the recipe and we can figure this out. Like I said, I'm going to change it just a little bit. I'm going to add some onion, some sliced onion to the bread and butter pickles. And that's totally fine to do. It's not going to change the recipe at all. It's just going to give you a little bit of a pickle taste to your, or onion taste to your pickles. So, we need 3.5 pounds for every 2 quarts. And I have a little bit over 5 pounds. So that's about 14 small to medium pickles. We're not going to worry about the vinegar, the sugar, or the pickle mix yet. So we need to slice the ends off the cucumber and then cut these. Okay, this recipe is saying to cut them into 1/2-inch slices. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, if you're good at eyeballing, you don't really need to measure this. And I'm going to put you guys, down. Again, you won't see my face. You'll see my stomach, but you'll definitely hear me. And this is where, let me move you guys up. This is where I had said, you know, I'm looking at the different cameras. It would be nice to have a zoom in, zoom out camera that can actually, you would be able to see me and not just hear me, and you would be able to view everything. Unfortunately, on Amazon, all the ones I've looked at look good, but then when you read the reviews, they don't have great reviews. So, like I said, okay, I'm going to try to move this. I'm going to move this up front. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to bring you guys down just a little bit. Like I said, you may not see my face. What you're going to do is you're basically going to just cut off the ends of the pickles. And you just need to, and you're going to discard those. And that's all you need to do. Now, about 1/2-inch slices. And the one thing I didn't do that I'm going to do right now is I'm going to grab a bowl. You're going to want a bowl. And I'll put this on this side. You're going to want something to put your slices in. I'm going to angle you guys. Unfortunately, you guys are on a... There we go. There we go. Okay. You're on a tripod, so it's a little bit harder for me to do. So, she says about 1/2-inch slices. I'm going to call that about a 1/2-inch slice. These are going to be a little bit thicker than what you might get at the supermarket. Now again, like I said, you could do these any size that you want. I just wouldn't go too thin with the bread and butter pickles. Now if you want to make smaller ones for sandwiches, you can certainly do that. And if you go a little bit too thick, that's okay too. You just don't want to go so thick, especially with the bread and butter. Now the dill pickles, you can actually do slices. You could do whole dill pickles. You could do your dill pickles any way you want. Now my great-grandmother's recipe is for the whole pickle, because they make the big gherkin size pickles. And like I said, we'll go through that recipe tomorrow. And I'm just going to cut the pickles. And I might do some that are small, some that are big. And we're going to do this for... We're just going to do this for all of the pickles. Like you might want to do some small for... so that you have some for sandwiches and stuff that aren't so big. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put those in a different bowl so that we can label and we can say, okay, these are for sandwiches or hamburgers or whatever you want to do. Let me know in the comments what your preference is. If you guys like dill pickles versus bread and butter, or if you're a bread and butter pickle eater. like I said, I'm not a huge pickle fan. I will eat pickles on the rare occasion. I sort of like more the sweeter pickles than the dill pickles. Now, I will eat a dill pickle if it's properly made. Like, I'll have one on a hot dog, or if they put them on if they put them on a sandwich, I'll eat them. But it's not something I would normally go and say, oh, I have to have this on the sandwich. Now, my husband's the opposite. He's a bread and butter pickle, and he loves them on sandwiches. He even loves to put them on hamburgers and stuff. And, of course, the sandwiches. Now, you might hear that whump, whump, whump. That's just the canner. Those are just the jars in the canner that are still heating. I don't have the water on a high boil. I have it more on a simmer versus a high boil. Sorry, Shadow. And we're going to do, maybe we're going to go back in and we're going to do some big cucumber pickles. Now, can you eat the pickles like a cucumber? Well, sure you can. The only difference is the pickles are going to be a little bit more on the tart side. They're not going to quite taste like a cucumber, but you can certainly use, if you don't have cucumbers, you can use the pickling. Although, why would you? Because you can get usually cucumbers most places. And we're just gonna toss those in there. Now, what happens if you don't buy enough pickles? Well, you can always make the 2 quarts. If you have enough pickles to get through the 2 quarts, you can certainly do that. I'm going to actually cut that one in half. I'll put that one in there. Okay. What I like to do, especially, and you just want to feel your pickles. This one has a little bit of a blemish right in here, but it's still firm. As long as it's not soft, you can use that. My rule of thumb, especially if you're new to pickles and bread and butter, is start small. I bought 5 pounds worth, and then a couple of days later I thought about it, and I'm like going, well, if I'm gonna make pickles, let's make pickles. And I went back and bought another 5 pounds. And this year they weren't all that expensive. A lot of things had gone up, like the peaches. When I made the peach jam, that was the most money I've ever spent on peaches in my life. But they were so much better than what I would get in a normal grocery store. Although my grocery store did have local Michigan peaches for a lot less than what I paid for them. They're just not quite the same because they do have a tendency to sit out longer at the grocery store, and because of the air that the grocery store gets it to, they just weren't the same. So, I'm just coming, got a few more pickles to do. I'm going to go ahead and finish the pickles. I'm going to stop this video. It's at 14 minutes already. You don't need me to see slicing. I think you guys pretty much know what to do with the slices, so I'll be right back. Okay, and I'm back. I'm just now slicing the final 2 pickles. And I'm going to put these, now this last one, because I've got quite a bit of thicker pickles in this one, and this is what I have for the thin ones. And we might use the pint jar for the ones that are going to go on sandwiches versus the quart. So I may have actually done too many. Now, can you do this in a food processor? Yes, you can. You can actually slice if you have a slicer and you don't feel like cutting it by hand, but it actually only took me about maybe 5 minutes to cut all those pickles and the cucumbers. Now with your ends, what you're going to do is you're going to dump those out, because those will serve no purpose to you. You can always put these, if you guys have mulch containers or you make your own mulch, you can definitely put those in there and they'll help that cause. So let me... Okay, now, what we need to do is we need to measure out our ingredients. Now, are you going to salt any of these? No, you don't put any salt in because the pickling spices will have had all of that. So now, let me read the directions. Okay. Now we're going to combine the vinegar, sugar, and the bread and butter pickle mix in a medium saucepan and bring that to a boil. And then based on your preference. So that's really all we're going to do. I did say we're going to slice some onion in. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. That's actually going to add more flavor to the bread and butter pickles. Now, what type of onion would I use? Well, you could certainly use a yellow onion. I think I'm going to use a white onion this time versus, and I just have 1 large onion. It all depends on the amount of onion that you want in the recipe. I'm going to keep you guys up there. I'm going to grab my cutting board again. And luckily I didn't throw my knife into the dishwasher yet. And what I would suggest, yeah, we're going to cut the hair off. What I would suggest with your onions is to cut them in fairly thick to medium slices. I wouldn't go crazy at all with what you do, and it just kind of depends on how much onion you want to put into your pickles. And I'll show you as soon as I get this. The one thing with me and onions is I don't have a good repertoire when it comes to peeling them without crying. So hopefully I can get through this quite quickly and not have too much of a worry. When God invented onions, he figured he'd make the whole world cry. And the funny thing about onions is you don't realize how many onions over the course of your lifetime you have to peel. Okay, and that peeled very quickly, so I was very, very lucky with that. Sorry, my dogs are just going nuts. And I'm going to move you guys down. Hopefully they'll quiet down in a second. So, let them out. It is raining. My little ones don't usually like to go out when it's raining, but I'll see if maybe that's what they need to do. So, I'm going to stop the video for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice the onion. You don't need to dice. Do nice slices. You can do them however, big, small, medium, doesn't matter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my slices and I'm going to, you kind of want to pull them apart so that you don't have big chunks of onion, unless you like big chunks of onion. I'm just going to put a little bit in with this. I might even, yeah, I think I'm going to use one whole yellow or white onion. I'm sorry. You can definitely use the yellow onion. I would suggest not using a red onion though, because a red onion, what it can do is it actually can change the color of your pickles. But white, yellow, that's fine. It's just a matter of preference. I probably should have made the bread and butter pickles a little bit in a little bit bigger of a bowl, because you are going to want to mix those in. And when working with onions, the easiest way not to irritate your eyes, like I just did, is not to fumble them that much. And then make sure you always wash your hands right away after you handle onions, because that's actually the oils from the onion is what makes you cry and gives you, runs your nose and everything else. And I was going to do a peach pie today, but I think I'm going to, at this point, I've done so much with my with the peaches. If the peaches that I have don't last, I'm actually okay with that. I can always get a small amount later. I'm just going to use my hand, and what we're going to do is we're going to mix the onions in with pickles, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. These I haven't done yet. This one I'm starting to do now. Now, do you have to add onions to your bread and butter pickles? Of course not. That's optional. Matter of fact, this recipe doesn't actually, doesn't have onions in it. But I figured, you know, you can pickle onions. I'd be interested to know if you guys actually pickle anything. I did find when I was looking for my great-grandmother's dill pickle recipe, I found my grandmother's pickled beet recipe. But unfortunately, I don't have beets this year. I didn't plant any. And my husband is not a great big beet fan. And for me to pickle just for myself, it's not worth it. I can buy beets that are already canned, and they're good. They're not the same as homemade. So now this recipe calls for, I'm going to get a medium saucepan, so I'm going to take my medium out. Now this is where you need to be a little bit on the cautious side. It does call for a small saucepan, but if you're going to start doubling the recipe, you're going to need to take that into consideration. And we need to see about doubling it, how much is in it. And it's 2.5 cups of vinegar. So if I double it, I'm at 5 cups. Plus I'm at 4, 2.5 and 2.5 is 5 cups of sugar and 1/4 cup of ball and bread and butter pickle mix. So that's 10 cups between the sugar and the vinegar. So medium may not be big enough. You may actually have to go to a large saucepan if you're starting to do that. Pack on your, okay. This side, I'm just reading this. Okay, so basically it's just ladling the pickles. So if you're going to make, when you make the mixture, and it's again, I'm gonna go over the ingredients. For 2 quarts of pickles, it's 3.5 pounds of pickling cucumbers, or about 14 small to medium pickles. We had a little bit more than that because we did 5 pounds. 2.5 cups of vinegar with the 5% acidity. 2.5 cups of sugar. Now you need to double all of that if you're doing more than 2 quarts. And 1/4 cup of the Ball bread and butter pickle mix. So 2/8. So 1/4 and 1/4, or 1/2. So you need 1/2 cup of the pickling spices. Okay, so if you're doing option 1, where you're going to enjoy your pickles right now, once you combine the vinegar, the sugar, and the bread and butter pickle mix in a medium saucepan and you bring it to a boil, what you're going to do is you're going to pour the sauce over your pickles in a large bowl. And you want to make sure it's not a plastic bowl, but either a metal bowl or a ceramic bowl. And then you're going to let them cool down in the bowl to room temperature before you pack your jars. And those don't need to be processed. Those, like I said, you give them time to cool down after they're packed, and then you put them right away into the refrigerator. We're not going to do that. We're going to do the canning one. So I got to get the boiling water in the canner going. And I'm going to take out the jars so we can get ready to pack them. So let me stop the video. I'm going to get all of that prepared so you don't have to see that part again. And I'll be right back.